As you see, artist, I'm using a pen here. You can also use a dull colored pencil. I was reading on some other art teacher web pages, and they were saying that a dull colored pencil works as well too. When you're finished, very carefully take the tracing paper and the tape off. If there's some that's left on the foam sheet, that's okay. With the Sharpie on the back, you're going to need to draw a large arrow, and it's going to point to the corner that would be in the center of the paper. Also, artists, don't forget to write your name on the back of your little foam plate. On scrap paper, I practiced doing some printing with just the black ink. You're going to do the same thing. You can do it twice if you need to. On the back counter or at your tables, I haven't decided, but probably the back counter, you're going to have a clear transparency sheet, and it's going to be taped to the counter. And I might have a paper underneath it to explain where you're going to tape it. And if you notice, artist, I'm rolling both directions, and I have a large green construction paper messy mat. This ink will stain. You want to be very careful when you're doing printmaking, okay? And you saw my arrow that's on the back. I've already done one. And in the center of my paper, you've already done your circle rainbow painting. That's where the arrow is going to face, always towards the center. And very carefully grab the edge, and you also, of your little plate, that's the foam plate. And you want to make sure that you get to the edge of your paper, and you very carefully line it up, because once you press it down, artist, you cannot take it off. And then you're going to have a scrap piece of paper, and you're going to set that scrap piece of paper on there. Be aware that you also have wet ink that you just did the other section with. And this is a brayer that I have not done any ink on, and it's a very large one. Then you will roll with the scrap paper across the top of it to make sure that it's pressed down enough. Please make sure you don't get any ink on that big roller. Now this is the cool part. It's called pulling a print. I take a peek here to make sure that it did adhere, and it didn't. So I press it back down, and you can just rub on the back of it with your finger, or you can take a scrap piece of paper and put it on top of it. And I make sure that I press it down. If you notice in here, I didn't push my sleeves up. You be aware to push your sleeves up though. I also had to move my paper over to where I was rolling in order for you to see everything in the video. You really don't want to have your paper project on top of where you've already had some printing. So then I go back in and I'm rolling it. Every time I use the brayer, make sure that that handle does not sit in the ink. Also make sure that you're going both directions. It might stick a little bit. And then each time I put the brayer back down, turn it over, find the arrow, sorry, point it towards the center, line it up. Like I said, I'm setting it on top of that area so you guys could see. I ended up moving my camera over so it wouldn't be putting on top of that black ink. And then I just very carefully line it up to the edges as best I can. Press it down without getting ink on the rest of my fingers. And if you notice my plate goes outside the paper, that's okay. You know, they're supposed to be 8 by 8, but it may not necessarily be cut perfectly by me. Take the brayer that does not have any ink on it. Like I said, it'll be the large brayer. Roll it down, and you can always use your finger, not the brayer, and be able to make sure that the ink is sticking to it. And this is the cool part. Like I said, it's called pulling a print. And when you get done, you can take the rest of the ink off with that scrap paper. Make sure you don't have any ink on your fingers, artist. I want to show you how little bit of ink you actually put down. You can always add more. That little bit of ink, it goes in each direction, and you make sure you're filling up the whole brayer. And just go back and forth, and please make sure that you keep it on that transparency. and that's what your brayer will look like. I didn't cut the sound out so you could hear the squeaking of the brayers. They're going to be a little squeaky, artist. Okay, the final piece to the puzzle. Like I said, be aware of where the ink is and where you're touching, and line it up and do the same step over and over. This is a great lesson, but the main thing about this lesson, artists, is you have to listen, take your time, do some practicing, and it really does look beautiful when you get done. Now with the extra ink, do a couple more pulls on scrap piece of paper just to get rid of that extra ink, and then you wash the plate and you can use it over and over again. You could actually do, we did it a long time ago in elementary class when you were with me. We did markers, and you could color over it and do a print with that at home. Artists, if you need to use your mats again, if you could put a scrap piece of paper where that ink is so it doesn't get on the other side, and that way you have a clean side to use for printmaking. The brayers can either soak in the bottom of the sink in the little container, or if you have time, go and clean them off. With these, I would like to be able to use them again. Carefully peel the tape off, make sure it goes in the trash. And these transparencies, the same thing, you would wash them and clean the sink, and I'll show you in just a second. Make sure if you have any ink on the counter that it gets wiped off. Thank you. As always, artists, please be responsible when cleaning our art room. Make sure that the sink is all cleaned out. We're not getting stuff all over the sides or on each other. And clean stuff up, dry it off, and set it on the drying rack. Hope you enjoyed printmaking today. Here's a new setup. It'll be quicker. This is what your setup's going to look like, artists. You're going to have two big green messy mats, and you can put your name on them. And you're going to share a brayer with the person next to you. You're going to have your plate that you've already designed. Here's your styrofoam plate. This orange paper is covered. Please don't pick this tape. I will use this over and over again. Try to keep the ink. Remember, you're using this tray. You're going to put the ink in there, and you're just going to use a little bit, and then you're going to take your brayer. You might have to hold on to the tray, or it might be okay because it'll go right against there. Go both directions, okay? Then you're going to take your plate. Now you're going to have your, let me move my camera real quick. Your setup is going to look like this. Just a second here. So you're going to have your brayer, and we might need two. I don't know if I have enough though. And you're going to have, this is your real paper that you're going to print on. So depending on what side you want to have it on, you could use your mat or a scrap piece of paper, and then you put the ink going this direction and going that direction, and then you pick it up, artist. And if you remember when we watched the video earlier, this arrow should point towards the center. You will have a dot in the center of your paper, okay, that we will have measured. You'll place it there very carefully, and then you can take another scrap piece of paper, and as it's sitting on there, let me move this once again so you can see it. As it's sitting on there, take your scrap piece of paper and very carefully massage the back of that foam plate to make sure that it's going to pull the print. Now, I don't have ink on this, obviously. Then you take this off. So if you need a couple pieces of scrap paper, that's fine with me. Very carefully peel it off, okay? Then you get your ink, like I said. You use the brayer again, fill it up again, go in both directions, make sure you have enough ink on there, and then you turn your arrow and you will start to do your radial print, set that on there. Maybe I have a yellow piece of paper so you know that that's your scrap or something like that, okay? Or something we've already used. And then you just rotate that around. When you're done, remember, you're gonna have extra ink. You can pull another print, This should be your radial paint that you've already done, okay, that we did the last week before that. And then you're finished. Good luck, artist.